Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The sound of a heavy crystal tumbler shattering against the mahogany wall echoed like a gunshot, freezing the air in the penthouse office. "You don't get to leave me, Julian," the man behind the desk snarled, his voice a low, vibrating rumble that usually commanded boardrooms and terrified rivals. But now, it only betrayed a desperate, violent fracture in his composure. Julian Vane stood his ground, though his trembling hands were clenched so tightly behind his back that his fingernails bit into his palms. He didn't look at the shattered glass. He kept his eyes fixed on the man who had owned his heart, his loyalty, and his sanity for 7 agonizing years. Alastair Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Heavy Industries, the icy, untouchable emperor of the city's corporate underworld, and the man who, just this morning, had announced his engagement to the heiress of the Valerius shipping dynasty. "My letter of resignation is effective immediately, sir," Julian said, his voice surprisingly steady, a fragile shield against the storm brewing in Alastair's mismatched eyes, one the color of steel, the other of fractured gold. "You have your fiancée to handle your schedule now. You don't need me." Alastair moved. It was a blur of predatory grace, the movement of a viper striking. In a heartbeat, he rounded the massive desk and invaded Julian's personal space, the scent of expensive sandalwood, rain, and cold fury enveloping Julian like a suffocating shroud. Alastair's hand, large and calloused from a youth spent fighting his way out of the gutters before he donned silk suits, slammed onto the wall beside Julian's head. "Is that what you think?" Alastair whispered, leaning down until his lips brushed the shell of Julian's ear. "You think you can just walk out of my life because of a press release? You signed a contract, Julian. You belong to this company. You belong." "Here. I read the contract, Alastair," Julian whispered back, finally looking up, letting Alastair see the glistening, unshed tears that he had fought to suppress all day. "I'd rather pay the breach penalty than spend another minute watching you prepare to marry a woman you don't even like." Alastair flinched. It was microscopic, a flicker of something raw behind the mask of the ruthless tyrant, but Julian saw it. For years, Julian had been the shadow behind the throne, the only one who knew how Alastair took his coffee, black, 2 cubes of raw sugar. The only one who knew Alastair's nightmares, the only one allowed to touch him when the migraines blinded him. Julian had loved him in silence, content to be the loyal secretary, the necessary piece of furniture. But the engagement had shattered that illusion. Alastair loved someone else. Or at least, he was willing to bind his life to someone else. And Julian, realizing he was nothing more than a convenient tool, had finally broken. "It's not about liking her," Alastair ground out, his jaw clenched tight enough to snap. "It's about power. It's about survival. You know how this world works." "I do," Julian replied, a sad, bitter smile touching his lips. "And that is why I am leaving. Because for you, everything is a transaction. Even me. And I'm out of currency." Julian ducked under Alastair's arm and walked toward the heavy oak doors. He expected Alastair to yell, to throw something else, to threaten him with lawyers. Instead, Alastair's voice floated across the room, cold and terrifyingly calm. "If you walk out that door, Julian, I will burn every reference you have. I will make sure no one in this city hires you. I will starve you out until you come crawling back." Julian paused, his hand on the brass handle. A single tear finally escaped, tracing a hot path down his cheek. He didn't turn around. "Do your worst, Alastair. It will still hurt less than staying." 3 weeks later, the rain in the city was relentless, turning the neon lights of the downtown district into smeared watercolors. Julian sat in a corner booth of a high-end jazz bar, clutching a glass of water. Alastair had made good on his threat. Julian's reputation had been torched. Every interview he landed was canceled last minute. His bank accounts were frozen due to a clerical error by a bank owned by a subsidiary of Thorne Industries. He was being hunted, not with guns, but with influence. "You look like a man who carries the weight of the world on his shoulders," a smooth, velvety voice interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Julian looked up. Standing there was a man who was the antithesis of Alastair. Where Alastair was sharp angles, cold colors, and terrifying intensity, this man was warm, golden, and seemingly open. He wore a velvet blazer and had a smile that reached his eyes. "Do I know you?" Julian asked guardedly. "I know you," the man said, sliding into the booth without asking. Julian Vane, the shadow of Thorne Industries. The only man who managed to keep Alastair Thorne sane for nearly a decade. "I'm Luca Valerius." Julian froze. Valerius, the brother of Alastair's fiancée. "I'm not looking for trouble," Julian said, reaching for his coat. "Sit," Luca said, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm not here on my sister's behalf. Or Thorne's. In fact, I'm here because I hate the way he treated you. I've watched you at the galas, Julian. You were the brilliance behind his success. And seeing him discard you for a political merger with my vacuous sister? It offends me." Luca signaled the waiter and ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than Julian's rent. "I have my own firm. Architectural design. We aren't under Thorne's thumb. I need a director of operations. Someone who can handle high-pressure clients and organize chaos. I think you're overqualified. Alastair will destroy you if you hire me," Julian warned. Luca leaned in, his dark eyes sparkling with mischief. "Let him try. I've always wanted to see the great Alastair Thorne lose his composure. Besides, I think you deserve to be appreciated. Properly." Luca's hand covered Julian's on the table. It was a warm, grounding touch. For the first time in weeks, Julian didn't feel cold. He didn't notice the figure standing outside in the rain, watching through the glass window. He didn't see Alastair Thorne, soaking wet, his Armani suit ruined, staring at Luca's hand on Julian's skin with a look of murderous, hollowed-out devastation. The annual Solstice Gala was the event of the season. It was a masquerade, a sea of silk, jewels, and hidden agendas. It was also the night Alastair and Isabella Valerius were to officially set the wedding date. Julian hadn't wanted to come, but Luca had insisted. "You are my director now, Julian. You walking on my arm. You show him you aren't broken." So, Julian wore a mask of white porcelain with gold filigree and a suit of midnight blue velvet that hugged his slender frame. He felt exposed, yet armored by Luca's presence. They entered the ballroom, and the atmosphere shifted. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew Julian. Everyone knew he had been Thorne's right hand. Seeing him on the arm of the bride's brother was a scandal of delicious proportions. Across the room, Alastair stood near the orchestra. He was wearing a black mask that covered the upper half of his face, making his mouth look even more severe. He was holding a glass of champagne that he hadn't sipped. Beside him, Isabella was laughing shrilly at something a senator said, hanging onto Alastair's arm. Alastair looked like a statue carved from ice. Then he saw them. Julian felt the weight of Alastair's gaze from 50 feet away. It was a physical impact, heavy and burning. Alastair's eyes locked onto Luca's hand, which rested casually on the small of Julian's back. "Steady," Luca whispered, sensing Julian's tension. "Let him look. He threw you away, remember?" Julian nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He tried to focus on the conversation, on the music, on anything but the predator stalking across the room. But it was inevitable. "May I cut in?" The voice came from behind them, deep and raspy. Alastair didn't wait for an answer. He ignored Luca entirely, his focus solely on Julian. "I believe this is a family dance, Thorne," Luca said, his smile tight. "And Julian is with me." "Julian is my employee," Alastair snapped. "Ex-employee," Julian corrected, finding his voice. He turned to face Alastair. Under the ballroom lights, Alastair looked haggard. There were dark circles under the mask, and he had lost weight. "I work for Luca now. Is that what you call it?" Alastair stepped closer, ignoring the crowd watching them. "Warming his bed to spite me?" The slap echoed through the grand hall, silencing the orchestra. Julian's hand stung. He stared at Alastair, his chest heaving. "How dare you? You are the one marrying for power. You are the one who treated me like an object. Don't you dare project your lack of morals onto me." Alastair didn't recoil. He looked at Julian with an intensity that bordered on madness. He reached out, grabbing the wrist that had just struck him. His grip was iron, but his thumb caressed the pulse point, feeling the frantic beat of Julian's heart. "Dance with me," Alastair commanded. It wasn't a request. "Go to hell," Julian hissed. "Dance with me, or I will announce to this entire room exactly what you whispered to me the night of the Tokyo merger 3 years ago." Julian went pale. That night, drunk on exhaustion and sake, Julian had confessed he would die for Alistair. He thought Alistair had been asleep. You wouldn't. Try me. Julian pulled his hand free from Luca's grip. 5 minutes, he told Luca. Then we leave. Alistair dragged Julian onto the floor. He didn't hold him in a standard waltz frame. He pulled Julian flush against his body, possessive and overwhelming. They moved to the music, a dark, dangerous orbit. Why is he touching you? Alistair demanded, his voice a low growl in Julian's ear. It's none of your business. Everything you do is my business. You think I don't know he's been taking you to dinner? Sending you flowers? Does he know, Julian? Does he know that you belong to me? I don't belong to you. Julian cried out, though the music masked his voice from the crowd. You're marrying Isabella? You chose her. Alistair spun them violently, dipping Julian low. I didn't choose her. I chose survival. The board was going to oust me. The Valerius merger was the only way to keep the company. To keep the life I built. The life I built so I could keep you safe. Julian froze in the dip, staring up into Alistair's masked face. What? Alistair pulled him back up, his breathing ragged. Why do you think I never let you get involved in the illegal shipments? Why do you think I kept you in the dark about the blackmail? Because if I went down, I wanted you clean. I wanted you safe. You're marrying her to protect the company. Julian asked, his mind reeling. I'm not marrying her. Alistair confessed, the words torn from his throat. The wedding is a trap. The DOJ is raiding the Valerius shipping yards tonight, using evidence I planted. Once the news hits, in about 10 minutes, the engagement is void. The Valerius family will be ruined. And I absorb their assets. Julian stopped moving. The other dancers flowed around them. You set them up? I destroyed them, Alistair corrected darkly. Because they threatened you. Me, Isabella's father. He knew about us. Or, he knew about how I look at you. He threatened to have you removed if I didn't agree to the merger. Alistair's hand tightened on Julian's waist. So I agreed. I played the part. I let you think I was a monster. I let you leave because I couldn't risk you being in the crossfire when I took them down. But then, Alistair glanced toward where Luca was standing, sipping his drink. Then you went to him. Her brother. And I lost my mind, Julian. I saw his hands on you, and I wanted to burn the city down. You should have told me, Julian whispered, the anger draining out of him, replaced by a terrifying mixture of relief and horror. You hurt me, Alistair. You broke me. I know, Alistair said, his voice cracking. He ripped the mask off his face, revealing the raw, unguarded desperation in his eyes. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life crawling to earn your forgiveness. But I couldn't let you die. I would rather you hate me and be alive than love me and be dead. Suddenly, phones throughout the ballroom began to buzz. A murmur of shock swept through the crowd like a tidal wave. The news had broken. The Valerius family had been indicted for international arms trafficking. Isabella screamed near the stage as federal agents, who had been disguised as waitstaff, moved in. Luca dropped his glass. He looked at his phone, then at Alistair. His charming smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure venom. He reached into his velvet blazer. Julian saw the glint of metal before anyone else. Alistair. Julian shoved Alistair hard, throwing him off balance just as the crack of a suppressed pistol sounded. A vase behind where Alistair had been standing shattered. Chaos erupted. Screams, people diving for the floor. Alistair didn't look at the shooter. He grabbed Julian, tackling him behind a marble pillar as security swarmed Luca. Are you hit? Alistair demanded, his hands frantically searching Julian's body, patting down his chest, his sides. Julian, look at me. Are you hit? I'm fine. Julian gasped, clutching Alistair's lapels. I'm fine. You idiot. You absolute idiot. Alistair slumped against the pillar, pulling Julian into a crushing embrace, burying his face in Julian's neck. He was shaking. The invincible CEO of Thorn Industries was shaking like a leaf. I thought I lost you. Alistair mumbled against Julian's skin. When you left? The silence in the office. It was louder than this. It was killing me. Julian wrapped his arms around Alistair's shoulders, feeling the tension in the powerful muscles. Why didn't you just tell me? We could have fought them together. I was arrogant, Alistair admitted, pulling back to look into Julian's eyes. I thought I could handle it alone. I thought I could control everything. But I can't control how much I need you. Seeing you with him, seeing you smile at him, it hurt more than any bullet. I was never smiling at him the way I smile at you, Julian said softly. I was just trying to survive. Like you. Alistair cupped Julian's face, his thumbs stroking Julian's cheekbones. Come back. Not as my secretary. Not as my employee. Come back as my partner. Half the company. Half of everything. I don't want to rule if you aren't standing next to me. And if I say no? Julian teased gently, though his heart was hammering. If I say I want to go start a flower shop? Alistair's expression darkened, the possessive glint returning to his eyes. He leaned in, his lips hovering millimeters from Julian's. Then I will buy every flower in the world, Julian. I will buy the pavement you walk on. I will be the customer who never leaves. You aren't escaping me again. Good, Julian whispered, closing the gap. The kiss was desperate, tasting of champagne, fear, and a love that had been silenced for too long. Around them, the Valerius Empire was crumbling, police sirens were wailing, and the society elite were in a panic. But behind the pillar, amidst the ruins of the masquerade, the shadow finally stepped into the light, claiming the emperor not as a master, but as a man. And that is how the calm, collected Julian finally brought the tyrant to his knees. If you enjoyed seeing Alistair lose his composure over a little jealousy, smash that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a man who lied to protect you? Or is trust more important than safety? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Julian, delicate features, brown hair, wearing white porcelain mask pushed up on head, midnight blue velvet suit, expression of shock and longing, tears in eyes, pinned against marble pillar. Man 2. Alistair, sharp masculine features, black hair, mismatched steel and gold eyes, intense possessive expression, wearing black tuxedo, mask discarded on floor, hands. Gripping man 1's shoulders tightly. Background is chaotic ballroom, blurred crowd, shattered glass, dramatic lighting, police lights flashing red and blue in distance, cinematic composition, sharp focus, emotional atmosphere.